What's up, guys? Mike Powell, another episode of Doc Talk. Hanging out in the South Bay, down here on the South Bay mud. You know what I mean? I come from this area, and this is the salty, brackish, nasty water. I've ridden in here a couple of times, winched in it and stuff like that. But overall, I've got a lot of water time out here, and I figure I might as well just talk about that a little bit. Down here, I'm over near the South Bay Yacht Club, and it's not really a yacht club. It's more of like the South Bay like butthole, and there's old boats and stuff. And I see this one right here. This one's not normally here, but there's a little spot. I think there might be a Boy Scout troop or something over here, just because like this shit's painted red, white, and blue too. But it just brings me back. I remember I was like 13, and I was like just kind of rolling into wakeboarding. Had been out probably like 5, maybe 10 times. And I remember our neighbor from like down the street, probably like 5-6 houses, he was the skipper, which is the captain of a ship or captain of a crew. He was the skipper of a Sea Scout crew, which is like Boy Scouts on water, but way more gnarly, because like the Boy Scouts learn knots, but Sea Scouts actually use them. And not just with like rope or twine or anything, like with big ropes, heavy ropes, and they're making monkey fists, throwing them to shore, connected to the large rope, which is like a couple 100 feet, and it's pulling in like some of these Sea Scout crews. They're all run by teenagers, pretty much up until they're 18, and some of these boats are like over 100 feet long. Some of them are a little bit smaller, depending on where they got them and whatnot, but a lot of them, are pretty decent size, and diesel engines and things like that. And it's pretty much like the kids in the crew, they run everything, and the adults are just there to supervise and to teach. It's really cool being a part of that. I got a lot of my knowledge and water influence from that. So yeah, like, one of the things that kind of brought me into that was like I said, I had been talking shit about wakeboarding, and I'm always riding my bike everywhere I went, or skateboarding somewhere, and I would see this dude hanging out outside his house, and every now and then I'd catch him out there, and he'd be having a smoke or something, and we'd talk about wakeboarding, or he'd ask me about wakeboarding, and I'd go off on detail about some crazy shit, and he's like, man, you should come out and hang out on the water with us, and I didn't know what he did, but he just happened to know my mom's boyfriend at the time from work. Like, dude was a cabinet maker. My mom's boyfriend was like a general contractor or general manager for a contracting company. So they knew each other, and they talked about it when they seen each other at work. And then, like, instead of me like roaming out in the streets as much as I was, they were like, hey, just, at least a day or 2 out of the week, we could send him out there, and he'll be with other kids and kind of be on the water, and maybe he'll chill out a little bit. And so thanks for that. Even when I would get in trouble or I wouldn't do my homework, like, my mom would try to ground me and stuff, and like try to keep me in the room, and I'd just sneak out and go down to their house and be like, oh, I'm ready to go, and like we'd take off, and then my mom would call me as we're like almost to Redwood City, and be super pissed and be like, oh, you got to get your ass home right now, like you're hella like being rude and blah blah blah, and you shouldn't be out there, your grades are fucked, but then I was already too far out there, and I couldn't turn around, so like, sometimes I would have to stick it out. But anyways, so when I would hang out there with the Sea Scout crew, a lot of it was like hanging out and like learning like boat and nautical terms, and like just knowing your way in and around a boat. But they would take 2 cruises throughout the summer, one at the beginning and one at the end, into the Delta, and they were both 10-day cruises. The boat, or the ship, it's a boat. They will all say it's a boat. Most people would call it a ship, but it's 97-foot ex-Coast Guard cutter, so it doesn't throw out like a huge wake. It's more of a cutter, but it's a nice big steel boat, and most of the time we'd hang out on that, but then they'd take them out for 10-day cruises out at the Delta. And so we go from the port of Redwood City all the way up through Benicia and into Antioch, and then all the way out to like deep water channels of Stockton and Rio Vista, things like that. And it was really exciting for me. Like I wanted to go on that trip because I hadn't really spent too much time at the Delta yet. I was just I was always told about it, and told like, hey Mike, you got to go ride out at the Delta, man. That's where all the good guys are at, and it's where the best water's at. If you want to get better, you might as well get out there. And so that was like my first way to kind of get out there. And you know, worked at the boat shop, washing boats to get half of the money to go on the trip, and the rest of the money, like the crew or the Sea Scout program sponsored me, which was really cool, just to get me out there and get me rocking. I was really happy about that. But yeah, we went out there, and I remember I was like first Delta trip, I was out there, and we were behind like a 79 Rhinell inboard outboard, and I just knew how to do my little contest tricks, and I was doing like 3 or 4 flips, couple of spins. And this time, this is like right when the Mastercraft X-Star with the big pickle fork was just coming out. And so that boat, along with like, there was like this nice like 23-foot Taiga, there was a wake setter out there, and there was also like some sort of nautique. And they were all on this slough, I remember, and I was like being towed at probably like 45, 50 feet behind like that yellow and, the black and orange rope, you know, like that one that like twists and spirals and it's really spiky when it gets frayed, that one. But I had a handle at the end of that. It was a little ski handle. It even had like a little V. It was ridiculous, but I was doing the tricks and stuff, and I was doing these flips past these big boats, and all these people were just like kind of jaw drop looking at me, and you know, that kind of gave me a little boost of confidence, and had a lot of good memories out there, man. Met a lot of good or a lot of people who were like, you know, just interested in the water. I traveled out from the Bay Area a lot of the times out there to like other spots where we would meet these crews, and just where these kids lived. And you know, that was kind of my first interactions with a lot more people. I wasn't really like friends with a bunch of people at school. Everybody kind of was like either like really cool with me, or they really were annoyed of me. Either way, I didn't really care. I was just trying to talk to people, and I was just being me. But I just connected with people who were closer to the water a little easier, or they had more tolerance for me than the average person would. So I spent a good time out there. We did a Christmas tree lot out in Palo Alto, and that's where like it was like the fundraiser for the year that would raise enough capital to fund the whole program for the season. So I did a lot of hard labor for that. That was fun. We painted the ship and learned all the little like regatta events and things like that. And but yeah, man, I learned a lot of good healthy tips and trick tips, and just ways of going around the water, working with the water, that I don't think the average boater knows about, or could even care less to learn. Although I feel like the more knowledge on the water you have, better experience you can have, as well as everybody else that's with you. You know, it's just, knowledge is fun. It's fun to learn. And I've as I started to get more into wakeboarding and hang out with more wakeboard type people, and people who were always on boats, it was fun to talk and ask questions to those people, and sometimes having them look at me like, dude, what are you talking about? You know, and I'm like, I'm spitting real shit, like I just learned the shit, right? But then people are looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like completely irrelevant. Or like cleat hitches. I remember I was hanging out at the boat shop, and a proper cleat hitch, like, what is this? You see this? Like, it's kind of right. It's actually, yeah, that one's right. That one's right. But the average person, when they do like a cleat hitch, it's always backwards. And I remember the boat salesman would like sell to customers, you know, they had money for a boat but didn't know how to tie knots. And then I come in, I was like super little, and I was like, oh no, man, you gotta do it like this, and the 2 bottom ropes gotta be going the same way. And they look at me like I was nuts. So yeah, man, learned a lot of good things out there on the Sea Scout crew, and just brings back a lot of good memories being out here at the water. So that's Mike Powell, man, another episode of Dock Talk. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share the video. Peace.